Hello everyone, it's Tomas Bumbulevičius, aka Tom10 Crafted on the mic and on the camera. And today we're going to explore 3 days MTB stage race in Singletracks heaven. Singletracks heaven in Europe? Yes, you heard it right. And we are off to Mouflon Tracks in Poland. So let's see whether I was able to survive 3 days MTB stage race. Kind of the first MTB stage race of the season, so let's have a look. As usual, I'm playing around with my Garmin just to make sure that the course is loaded, as well as power meters are connected and all that stuff. In front you can see 5 guys. So the intro, the first stage of the race was kind of prologue-like, where you do the time trial effort and 5 people each every 2 minutes were released to execute their time trial effort. Based on the results, everyone were packed into the starting gates next day. You could have seen that I have a camera on my back, so that means we will have 2 camera angles. Yeah, I've been carrying that extra weight, even though it was 36 kilometers race with almost 1000 meters elevation. And at the start we have lucky media, so if we have lucky media, we are definitely should be lucky, right? In the beginning I kind of thought what to do the best in order to start the race in the pack, but you could have seen that everyone wasn't able to keep up with my pace, at least from my seat. And once we hit the single track, one guy asked me whether I'm going in the right direction. So yeah, like 2 kilometers into the race, someone's asking you whether you are doing the right way. It wasn't very inspiring, but at the same time I realized why that happened. One day before the race, organizers changed the course. Why they did it? Well, have a look.
If you cross this road again, don't go any further. And we try to overpass it.
I met 2 brothers from Belgium who told me that I shouldn't go anywhere further on that single track. I kind of did a partial recon of the first day stage because there were woodworks and it was impossible to go on the single track. Based on that reason, organizers changed the course a bit, and probably that guy who I met in the beginning was loaded incorrect GPX. Around 20 minutes or so into the course, I managed to catch a bigger group, and apparently someone who started 2 minutes after me, one of the leader of the race, Piotr Brzoska, or similarly sounding surname, managed to catch me as well, and he was just flying. Thankfully, on the single tracks, the guys like I and the ones which I took are friendly, and they just moved to the side to allow you to go in front. So the first stage was like 600 meters or so initial climbing. You can see that on the top right corner of the screen there is an indication of elevation gain and as well as elevation lost. So we are climbing 600 meters straight from the start, and it was a bit of a pain, but you know that once you do that climb it will be almost over. Well, technically there are still 300 meters left, but it's a joke compared to that first huge chunk. And yeah, Mouflon Tracks is about single tracks, and you can see that we are climbing here on the gravel road, but trust me, it was kind of one of the few double track roads through the whole 3 days. So organizers made sure that the single tracks dominated in the whole course. I kind of had a back camera, and it's very interesting to see how someone catches you. For that reason I kind of was happy to have that camera, but at the same time, yeah, it's an extra weight. But you can have a look how someone nicely catches you on the climb. That was one of the leaders as well. Well, he should learn some manners, because burping in front of others is not the best way to do. And here I met some Polish guy who was not able to speak English, but based on his gestures and some mimicking, I understood that he needs a pump. Because I had it, I just gave it to him, and hopefully he managed to reach the finish. The reason why I ask how someone is doing in such situations is because you don't want to get yourself into that standing position and everyone's flying past you and they don't care. So do the things which you would want the things to be done for you. And that's the motto I always use. On such road, it's kind of great to have white tires because it's stony and it's rough, and at the same time I use 2.3 Cross Kings because a few days ago I been in this location. It was very wet, terribly wet, and I realized that, well, I'm not even sure how the other single tracks going to look like, so if they are slippery and all that stuff, I decided that, well, 2.3 Cross Kings could be a good idea. Was it? We will see in the next days. There were food stations on the course, and you could have seen that no one is giving you anything on them. So there are water bottles, you can stop, you can use that extra time to add that water into your bottles. Well, I believe that if there are personnel, they could at least do that for you. You just open up the bottle and that's it. At least that's what I would expect from organizers. That was a bit disappointing, but usually I bring with myself 2 bottles, so that was not a big of a deal, and I wouldn't have stopped there anyways. This was the only massive hike the bike section of the day, and it wasn't too bad. But definitely at the top section of this, it was completely impossible to ride on your own. So yeah, I kind of joked that if someone goes here on the bike, not e-bike, casual one, I can give him a bit of bounty. So do you want to check that out? At the top I was completely exhausted, but I knew that here is going to start the Milky Way single track, which at least from the videos looks amazing. Well, after a bit of hard climb, it was not that much amazing to ride here. But anyways, 2.3 Cross Kings was brilliant in these conditions. Of course, I expected a bit more wet, but at the same time it was even better that it was not wet. Then you are going on such downhills that rolling resistance is not that much important, because at least me, I brake a lot, and you could have seen Piotr, who doesn't brake at all, or at least he brakes at certain points only and don't sleep on his brake levers. So that's good for him and very nice skills. A few days ago I kind of reached the bottom part of Milky Way, and I realized that, well, my skills are a bit rusted. So yeah, on the first day it was kind of refreshing those skills. Well, I don't have much of them anyways, but you could have seen that the brother from Belgium, Dirks, their surname is very hard to pronounce, almost fell on that bridge. That was kind of also the reason why I thought about chunkier tires in case those bridges are wet. Of course, you can go just more straight, not angular, and avoid any slipperies. But yeah, that was kind of the only slippery bridge on a whole first day. On the last single track down, one guy managed to catch me, and I asked whether he wanted to overtake me, and he said, no, that's fine, we can just go in front. And probably it was just good to see the flow and where direction should lead you to. So with that in mind, I reached the lucky media point once again, and we are coasting down to the finish of the first day. My initial plan was to fit into 17th position, and I managed to do that. Overall, my position in the open category was 63, and in the men M3 age group it was like 18 out of 76. So the minimum plan was accomplished for a first day. I managed to reach the position of the first gate, and we are off to the stage 2. The stage 2 was around 350 meters above our living location, so we decided to put the bike on the top. And anyways, we have lucky media in the car as well, so she would have driven that distance anyway. So I put it on resin on the roof, and we're going to do 45 kilometers with kind of 1K of elevation. The starting position after stage 1 defined that I'm going to start the race at the first gate. That means at 10 o'clock in the morning with the strongest guys. Everyone else is going to start 10 minutes increments down. So while we've been waiting for the start, one guy decided that he wants to pee, and instead of going from the gates, he decided that doing that in the gates is pretty good idea. Is it really a pretty good idea? Let me know in the comments. At least for me it was the first time seeing that. I would wish that it's the last time I saw that. Anyways, we are off to the start, and like in the first day, just this time it's a mass start. We are going in the climb, and that climb is like almost 300 meters or so. The funny thing is that in the rear you can see that it's no longer cross king, it's 2.2 race king. I realized that rolling resistance and the weight which cross kings adds is a bit too much in these conditions, so I added race kings, even though I never used race kings in the past. I just had it and now I'm trying to use it. Whether it will prove to be a good idea, as usual, we'll see. Before the race I kind of checked the climb in the beginning, and I realized that if I go on the right, if there is a queue on the left, I won't suffer that much, and it was a good idea until the point where everyone started to overtake me. So overtaking like it's nothing, but probably they are a bit lighter guys, hopefully. Anyways, it was a pretty hard effort, and everyone were just flying on that mountain. You keep 350 watts and it's just not enough. Each day had some sections which crossed through the days, and this one was on the day one. Because I knew how wet those areas are, I kind of tried to be a bit safer and go on the sides, but you can see that other guys didn't care and they just went straight. Going straight is not always an option, because on the first day I almost went over the bars. So I was careful about that. Everyone was pushing, and then we realized that we are going down off the bike, because it was very rocky and steep section, and I very much doubt whether someone was able to ride it. But as soon as that area has ended, we got on the bike and you can hear the symphony of our brakes noise. Yeah, so when we got on the bikes again, it was a bit complicated to ride here, because there are a lot of rocks and someone in front goes slow. You have to go slow as well, unless you find a better pathway like someone did. But for me it was like locked down. I'm watching what in front of a guy does, and it's just too slow to go in such area. And you will see how it ended up for me. The guy kind of bumped through the stones, and I was not able to do that successfully, and I realized that in front there is a big stone, and if I'm going through it on the steep downhill, I'm going over the bar. So I just went on the side, and it was kind of very soft landing, and from that point we started to go down in a bit less steep but still rough terrain. And on this point I kind of shrugged a bit, because I added race kings. I never rode the race kings, and I heard situations like people make cuts into those tires very easily. So I'm like, okay, I don't know how this course going to look like on the second day, and if it's going to be that rough, probably potentially I'm going to regret that decision, but we'll see whether it was like that or not. In the single tracks I kind of been a bottleneck in some point, because when there were sharp switchbacks I kind of tried to be safer than flowy, and that maneuver usually closed the gap between me and the other guys in the back. But whenever it was more flatter, I put the pedal to the metal and try to push a bit more, and you can see that whenever that happens I open the gap myself as well. So at least from that corner I wasn't that bad, and at least I believe the guys didn't suffer that much. But in front there was a group of people who I tried to catch on my own as well. And sometimes the gap closed up a bit, other times it opened up. Yet finally the gap opened on the downhill, and bye bye guys. We've been left on a single track, few of us, and whenever we felt like someone is a bit too slow, we tried to pass them, and it was a success at some point. It was really devastating to catch those guys because I really added very strong effort, and you can see that my segment time of this part was also not that bad, and the power output was significant, but again, when it came to the downhill, they just disappeared. And I'm like, what I'm doing differently? I'm pedaling very hard and trying not to brake that much, but still it was a bit of a different story in terms of skills. And at the back there was our Poland guy who has YouTube channel, so it's Tomasz, and he overtook me before those route sections as I was trying to eat. And eating in that area, not the best idea. So out of excitement, pushing really hard, I missed the corner, and thanks for a guy from Sigulda, Latvia, Oskars, who kind of shouted something, and I realized that, okay, I might be going in the wrong direction. So I allowed our guy to go in front in order not to cross his road. And that way we are coasting in a bit of a climb in the single track. And here it's a matter of preference whether you're going to cut the switchback earlier or not. Personally, I don't do that, others does, but I would say that karma gives you a payback and you shouldn't cross that. And you can see that the guy here learned the lesson in a hard way, but I hope that he's fine. In general, I could talk very much about the single tracks, and I could add a lot more of them, but there is a full on board where you could just have a look how beautiful those were. Usually I add chapters where, based on the segment name, you can check how that segment looked like, and also at the top bar of the screen you can see the time indicator, so based on that you can also figure out the timing on the full on board. So the link will be down in the comments and description, potentially also maybe on the side panel where you could access the playlist directly. And in general, talking about the organizers, the course markup was great. There were like few sections here and there where either you or other participant was not fully sure where to go, but then someone just spotted like a markup somewhere in front and it was all good. So based on that, it was good effort by organizers, but at the same time, when you're going in the single track, which is like 6 kilometers in length without any ways to go anywhere else, it's not that hard. The second day ended up with a single track down, the same Milky Way, just a bit further down on the mountain. We had a long climb before that, and I kind of stayed with the guys in group. But before the single track, I realized that, well, probably I'm a bit slower on that single track anyway. So I decided that I'm not going to try to catch them, but eventually I did. So in front there was Lucky Media who captured the images, and at the same time it's Antanas Budrackis from Lithuania. He did the shorter distance adventure, called it this, and myself, I've been in the classic, so adventure and the classic distance participants merged somewhere in the middle of the course, and they went with a loop which was 27 kilometers or so. So usually adventure was like 10-15 kilometers shorter distance than the classic one. So I finished the second stage in 48th position out of 270 something in open category, and 17th among men in my age group. So 2 out of 3 is already completed, and we can go to the third day. This time the start was in the city center, and we had to do very similar distance like we did On the second day, it's around 43 kilometers with 900 meters of elevation. Actually, Garmin calculated a bit more, but it doesn't matter that much. The start was a bit strange because it was narrow, and you can see that some guys went on the right while I was following others who was already in front. So apparently those who went on the right were correct, and it was the right way to go, but you can see that I lost a few places here and there. It didn't matter that much because on the third day we are again going straight into the climb. It was a bit shorter one than on the second day as well as on the first day, but it was a steep one, and at least this time maybe I was a bit further down in the participants list, but guys were not that much flying. Maybe there were not too much powers left in the legs. Anyways, I managed to overtake quite a few on that climb. So I was lucky again that Neringa captured me, and if you want to take a look at potentially your images, because I've heard that some participants were not happy that the organizer didn't capture them, well, take a look at the gallery in Lucky Media on Facebook and maybe you were lucky, who knows. After initial climb there was a bit steeper section, but wasn't too bad. Maybe I was not pushing hard enough, and that way it didn't prolong for me too much. Then you don't know what to expect in the course. You can just take a look at the profile and figure out what potentially could be it, but you definitely won't be able to understand the terrain and the roughness. So this was one of the harder climbs on the day, where it was a bit loose and you would have to choose the proper pathway to go in order to stay on the bike. I realized that in front there's going to be a downhill, and I kind of drink a bit and then I try to eat a bit. It was a very bad idea because it started to downhill, and at the time it started to downhill I was still not able to eat it, and then I was not able to unlock the fork, and I was like bouncing on those roots and rocks while having the gel under my palm. So it was like stupid moment, and I lost quite a few seconds here and there just because it was a bad timing. But once I managed to put it in sight, I was going again on my own pace, but I'm not sure what those guys were powered on, but you can see how fast the gap opened up. I'm like wasted maybe a few moments here and there and they are gone. And not like they are gone and you can try to catch them, they are gone forever. So yeah, maybe I shouldn't spend that much time cleaning the lenses. Actually, on this day I went only with single camera just because, alright, that's enough. That's enough of beautiful shots, that's enough of someone overtaking you from the back. Let's just focus in racing. And you can see that racing downhill is not that much of my thing, because those guys who just recently was in front completely disappeared. How? I have no idea, no answer. The guy in front kind of decided to eat probably, so I went in front and pushed a bit before the single track began. So as mentioned on the second day, the single tracks were very nicely rolling, and anything like 2.3 of tires was completely unnecessary, but I still had it cross-kink on the front. Well, maybe it helped me on the corners a bit because of my lack of skills, and those berms and maybe sometimes switchbacks were potentially a bit easier to ride on my skills, but you can see that I don't have a problem to allow others to go in front, and I feel that I'm faster. And then you hear those free hub sounds from the back, and not one, not two, and maybe even not three. It's a bit tempting to either go on the side or just push further. Talking about pushing further, there was a bit of uphill here, and yeah, I'm not exactly sure but the guys here went downhill like crazy. Myself, I tried to be a bit precautious, and at the same time, on one point when I hit the water, something went into my eyes, so I'm going here almost blinded and trying to survive. And it was like at some points it was a close call for sure, and I was like, I have no idea how those guys went here so fast, like you can't even see them in front. And also with Race King, I was a bit of not too secured about the puncture protection, so those were kind of hard, sharp rocks. And you can see the guy on the right, it's from Lithuania, Matas Dumčius, with a puncture. So I asked whether he has everything, and I noticed that he is already using CO2 cartridge. So thankfully it was a fast fix for Matas, and he was able to finish the race with a few minutes lost here and there. I added a few single track sections here. They were not too technical in terms of the cornering and all that stuff. They were a bit going up most of the times, and you can see that whenever it's going down, the guy in front gets away. Then you have to have a bit of a power. I managed to keep up, so that's just an indication of the whole race. Whenever it was more power based, I was able to, at least at some degree, to go together, but then it was fast down. Maybe I was a bit too soft and safe, but at the same time, then you slip a few times and you understand that you were really close to the failure. You kind of enable that secure mode and try to go at your safe pace, I would say. So in general, about the courses, it was probably the first time I went so much kilometers in the single tracks. So considering that it's single tracks and it's all racing, it was really amazing. And you can see that in these segments I executed quite great power outputs and time compared to other participants. So if I would add a bit more technical skills, that would just add additional fun factor to racing in such conditions, because you could not only go fast, but you could have more fun doing that. It was very hard to handpick all those beautiful single tracks, because technically they were all very nice. We were going a group of few people in these uphills, and I allowed Jānis Vanaks from Latvia to go in front. So we were pushing here really hardly. There was also other Latvian behind, Adolf Žuna, who was fast guy as well, and we kind of on the climbs were together, on the downhills we separated a bit. And it's kind of the idea of the whole race for me here in Mouflon Tracks. Apparently Adolf now goes behind me, and he had the camera, and you can see some shots from his angle as well. It's kind of nice to see yourself riding from the back, just to get the taste how you do it, where you could improve, etc. So yeah, Adolf, next time we should ride together, and you could capture me, I could capture you, and we could learn something new. There was also a tricky part where it was mentioned uwaga. Uwaga probably is attention or something like that, or warning. So it was a branch from the side, and it was tricky one, so thankfully it was marked, and also it was steep down, so it was a pretty scary thing if it wouldn't be marked. We're approaching the finish fastly, and you could have seen the guy who hit his pedal to the bridge and almost went off. Seeing that kind of added yet additional safety trigger, like it's no point to risk it all, because yeah, you want to push every tiny bit of what you have in your legs, but at the same time you want to finish, and the finish is not that far away. Considering we're racing out against ourselves and we are not even close to the top 10, so funny thing here is that I realized that, okay, so now it's going to be single track down, it's close to the finish, and we are golden. Well, we are not, because no, actually I kind of thought that the finish is a lot closer, but then I realized that we are not in the middle of those single tracks going down to the finish, but at the top, to 7 kilometers down. And I'm like, well, I shouldn't have left those guys because now I don't have anyone to follow. But at the same time, it was already known location, and we are flying to the finish. So in the stage 3, I was even more positions up in the open category and finished 16th in my age group. So yeah, that's how the stage 3 finished, and at the same time the whole Mouflon race has been completed for 2023 edition. The finisher jersey is on me, and I have successfully finished those 120 kilometers with almost 3,000 meters of elevation, 3 days MTB stage race in Poland. Would I repeat it? Absolutely yes. I would add one additional thing, is that we were very lucky with the weather. It was almost completely no clouds, direct sunlight, dry, so perfect conditions. Last year it wasn't that perfect, and it was wet, and like you wouldn't want to do that probably. But anyways, the good weather, great company, and in general nice single tracks. It was amazing race, and I'm going to potentially do that in the future as well. So if that was interesting to you, you can subscribe to the channel and make sure to watch other videos about MTB races, analysis, and all that stuff. So thanks for the time, and I hope to see you around.